I'll get straight to the point. A lot of stories we all love are owned by corporations. Big, powerful corporations. Let's talk about what that might mean. Do I really want to get into this? I mean, I'm not an economist or a politician. Is there really anything I can add to?
Just get on with it!
This has been a hot button issue in recent years, especially with the whole Disney buying 20th Century Fox thing. Yeah, everybody knows that movies and TV studios are big companies that make a lot of money. But not everybody realizes just how few of them there are. Just a handful of megacorporations own more than 80 to 90% of the entire TV and movie industry. The biggest and most notorious are probably Disney, Warner Brothers, NBC Universal, and Viacom CBS. For an example of how wide a reach these companies have, let's look at Disney. In addition to the traditional Disney animated movies, they also own Pixar, Marvel, Star Wars, National Geographic, ABC, ESPN, and everything that belonged to Fox, including Blue Sky, Hulu, and FX. That is a very non-exhaustive list, by the way. The other three I mentioned are similar in size to Disney, and all have nearly as many subdivisions to the point where it becomes really hard to keep track of all the things they own. I'm not going to sit here and list every single asset each one has because that would take forever, but I linked to some more information in the description. But each of these four companies owns close to 20% of the film industry market share, and has its hands in cable TV, streaming, books, video games, theme parks, etc.
Behold! My stuff.
There's also Sony, which sticks mostly to movies in terms of content production, but also equals the previous four in terms of size and profits. And MGM, one of the next biggest movie studios, was recently bought by Amazon, only the biggest company in the entire world. Even a company like Netflix, which basically just sticks to streaming and doesn't have as many tentacles as some of its competitors, is still a big company that makes a ton of money from its millions of subscribers. I'm not here to tell you whether these companies are too big or too powerful or if they should be broken up or anything. That's not a question I feel equipped to answer. Instead, I want to get philosophical, because we're talking about art here. It's not like these companies are selling furniture or bags of chips. Art is something uniquely human. We all use different forms of art all the time to try and communicate ideas and emotions to our fellow humans. Storytelling in particular is a form of art that can get really big and complex, containing lots of different concepts and artistic statements. In its purest form, here's how a story comes to be. An artist, the storyteller, comes up with a concept for a story they want to tell. Then in the process of creating that story, they weave together ideas from their own imagination with their own life experiences. They consider their audience and tailor the progression of the story in a way that will emotionally affect that audience, while also ensuring that the story still makes the storyteller themselves happy. Often the storyteller will embed specific themes or symbols, consciously or unconsciously, that serve to convey a message of some kind to the audience, one that wouldn't have the same impact if it were just plainly stated. Finally, the audience gets to experience the story. The audience gets an emotional reaction out of the story, and the storyteller gets satisfaction out of expressing themselves. I'm a big fan of Neil Gaiman's philosophy that stories are empathy machines. Stories allow for incredibly complex feelings to be transmitted from artist to audience, and all parties involved gain a new understanding of the human experience. There's a direct scientific link between consuming fiction and higher levels of empathy. That's how I would define artistic expression. It's the use of art by an artist to create an empathetic link through their work. What happens then when, aside from expressing themselves, the storyteller is also trying to make money? Well, then the priority shifts. Stories are made to please an audience, that's only natural. But when the motive to make a profit is involved, the artistic process becomes less about artistic expression and more about reaching as wide an audience as possible. Each new audience member has money to spend, so a bigger audience makes more money. And the bigger the company financing the story, the more people who are depending on the story to turn a profit, and the more of a priority a wide audience becomes. This can assert itself in some ways that are fairly obvious. For example, action movies have been one of the most common movie genres in the world for decades. A lot of people complain that most action movies are really simple and stupid. This is because action movies are trying to reach a wide audience, and making a movie that's more complicated risks excluding people who wouldn't be able to understand it. but it also affects stories in some more subtle, more insidious ways. Think about this. Have you ever seen a gay character in a Disney movie? Unless you're already familiar with this issue, you're probably struggling to think of one. Disney has become notorious in recent years for hyping up the LGBT representation in their movies, only for the final product to barely acknowledge their queerness at all. Here are the most famous examples. The earliest is LeFou in the Beauty and the Beast live-action remake, who got a ton of media attention as Disney's first gay character, but you could barely even tell he was gay in the actual movie. All there is one sort of flirty line that he says to Gaston, and like 3/4 of a second where he dances with a man in the final scene. There's a female Cyclops cop in Pixar's Onward who has one stray line about having a girlfriend.
It's not easy being a new parent. My girlfriend's daughter got me pulling my hair out, okay?
These 2 female pilots in Star Wars Episode 9 where you almost have to watch the movie in slow motion to spot their kiss. Joe Russo's director cameo in Avengers Endgame where he talks about going on a date with a man.
But I'm seeing them again tomorrow, so it's great.
And Artie from Cruella and McGregor from Jungle Cruise, both of whose queerness is only implied. Why would this be the case? It's not like same-sex relationships are anywhere near as controversial as they used to be. Gay marriage has been legal in the United States since 2015, and as many as 3/4 of Americans support LGBTQ non-discrimination laws. Why is Disney so reluctant to embrace queer characters? Well, even though things have gotten better, the amount of homophobic people in the world is still not zero. Probably the number one reason why Disney keeps their queer representation so sparse is so they can play nice with China. Their government censors any mention of queerness in the media. All the examples I listed from before can very easily be cut around or dubbed over for a Chinese release. But China doesn't get all the blame. There are plenty of people right here in the US who would refuse to see any movie that has a gay character. And every person who would choose to do that is one more person who's not giving Disney their money. There are artists working at Disney who want to include queerness, and there are audience members who want to see it. But Disney continually makes the decision to keep queerness out of their movies because they're focused on making a profit. Things seem to be trending upward on that front at least. Marvel's Eternals had Phastos, who was openly gay and married with a kid. And Disney Channel's groundbreaking show The Owl House featured a lesbian relationship. But Disney announced they were canceling it just days after they got together. Going back to what I said earlier, stories are made to generate empathy, to introduce ideas into the minds of their audience. Sometimes those ideas make some people uncomfortable. That's a good thing. Great storytelling can push the envelope and broaden people's perspectives. But stories motivated by profit encourages creators to only include the safest, blandest ideas that don't challenge the audience at all, just keeping them content and pacified. An example that really stuck with me has to do with one of Disney's newest releases, Encanto. There's a character in that movie named Luisa, who has super strength, and she's also got super big muscles, which you don't see a lot with female characters in movies. There's this tweet I saw from someone who worked on character design for the movie that said, "You wouldn't believe how hard it was to get them to let us put muscle on that character." I imagine that Disney execs wanted Luisa to be more like a tiny little girl who is inexplicably super strong. Which I get, there's nothing wrong with that kind of character archetype. But Disney was specifically steering the movie away from having a muscular woman, directly against the wishes of the artists making the movie. Why? Because the idea of a muscular woman makes some people uncomfortable, which risks more potential audience members deciding not to go see it. Sure, the art team won out this time, but it makes you wonder how many muscular female characters we missed out on in earlier movies. It makes you wonder how many muscular actresses lost out on parts because of the way they look. It makes you wonder how many women have actively avoided building up muscle mass because media has taught them that women aren't supposed to look like that. Okay, I'm gonna stop picking on Disney for a while. Every major studio has been guilty of something like this at one point or another. And I don't want to focus too much on the topics of diversity and representation. Those issues are really easy to see and to point out, but there are countless other ways that profit affects the art we consume. Ways that you can't even see unless you know where to look. It all has to do with avoiding controversial ideas and keeping audiences comfortable. Like how almost every movie ever made has a happy ending. Now, I like happy endings as much as the next guy, but sometimes seeing characters fail can be really, really cathartic. Sad endings are great for shaking up your preconceptions and confronting you with something new. But again, they're more likely to make people uncomfortable, so big studios tend to avoid them. Or how every year there are fewer and fewer R-rated movies, because it's more profitable to make everything PG-13 to make sure teenagers see them. Or how everything these days is part of a huge franchise to score an easy payday from the franchise's built-in audience. Or how most mainstream stories basically never take any kind of overt political stance, besides really obvious statements like dictators are bad. Most people intuitively understand that money influences what appears in their favorite movies. but it can be hard to explain and articulate exactly how that influence asserts itself. One of the best ways to examine these effects is in comparing books and their movie adaptations. Now, books are not immune to the influence of money. Lord knows I know that. Whenever I write anything, there's always something in the back of my mind thinking of ways to get major publishing houses to believe my book will make them a nice profit. But publishing companies have their business interests spread out over a ton of different books, and because of that, they're more willing to take risks with some of them. It takes a lot of people and resources to make a movie, and studios have a lot more resources invested in fewer products, so you tend to feel the influence of money more. Let's look to The Hunger Games as an example. Now, I could pick a movie that totally butchered the source material, but I'm choosing The Hunger Games because the movie is a pretty solid and faithful adaptation, which means that the ways it softened up the book's story are that much harder to spot. First of all, the movie did the same thing that every movie about teens does, and cast super hot actors in their 20s to play the teens. Besides the fact that Hollywood always does this to ensure that their movies are full of faces that are pretty to look at, it also makes the games a lot less horrific. It's a lot easier to watch adults run around killing each other and looking cool than it would be to watch actual kids. Here are pictures of Jennifer Lawrence and Josh Hutcherson when they were the actual ages of the characters in the books. Can you imagine kids who looked like that forced to murder each other? And in the books, Katniss and Peeta play up their romance for the cameras to give them a better chance of survival, because this story is supposed to be a critique of reality TV and appearances supplanting reality. The movie toys with this idea, but their romance is way more genuine, taking most of the bite out of that satire. The violence is toned down significantly to keep a PG-13 rating, which when combined with the characters all looking like adults, made scenes of kids killing each other a lot easier to watch. It's still a cautionary tale about a horrific dystopia just like the book was, but wherever possible, the movie allows the viewer to indulge in the action and the romance without forcing them to engage with uncomfortable questions about this world where, again, kids have to murder each other. It sets up a story where some of those watching can miss the important messaging entirely, instead just passively enjoying the violence on screen. So what's the point of talking about all this? What do we do with this information? Am I saying that you're not allowed to enjoy movies anymore? No, of course not. This is a complex issue with no easy answers. Films need money to get made, so money will always play a part in what movies are about. My only goal is to make more people aware of all this. When you're watching a movie, take note of the ideas that appear in them. Take note of the ideas that don't appear in them. And think about why that might be the case. It's easy to turn your brain off and be a passive consumer. Instead, try to be more active. Try to be a free thinker.
I gotta do it, man.
Dude.
Oh.
There, did that push the envelope enough for you? Great, so are we done? Are you kidding me? But I don't want to make anybody mad. You don't mean... No, please, you can't make me, I can't!